Hey everybody, I know this is kind of out of nowhere, and I'm talking relatively quiet because the people around me are asleep and it's really cold outside, or else I'd go out there. But I was just kind of pondering, as I do late at night, um, and for some reason, I think the most at night, and I kind of don't like it. Pray for me that God would reverse that and make it so that I am full of all kinds of productive and helpful thoughts in the morning instead of at night, because at night I would rather be sleeping and I would rather be thinking in the morning, so. But I was just thinking about, right now I'm reading Dallas Willard's book, Life Without Lack, and I love everything Dallas Willard talks about. It's wonderful, and it just has revolutionized the way I view life and the way I view reality, and I really believe, especially just intellectually, everything that he says. And I don't think there's a better thing to believe than to believe what Jesus taught about the kingdom of God and what Jesus taught about reality, the way that he revealed himself to be so sufficient and God to be so sufficient. And I've experienced things in my life that are so significant that I have come to believe God is sufficient and that he is amazing, that he must be amazing. But I've just decided to make a video because I was just thinking about how I think for some people, and I do think I'm probably wrong here, but I want somebody to help me with this. I think for some people it's impossible, and I think I'm one of these people. Like where I'm kind of just like Thomas, and I think it's impossible to really fully believe that God is who he says he is, and like fully believe it. And here's what I mean by that. Like Dallas Willard poses, and this is from, he's quoting somebody else here. I wish I would have brought the book out here with me. It's page 30 something of Life Without Lack, and he says that this person offers a solution to the fears that we struggle with, because this whole book is teaching us to live in Psalm 23 and just not be afraid at all. Like, and Dallas Willard is big on just, you don't have to be afraid. You can live in the sufficiency of a God who is so wonderful, who made everything. And you can be so confident in him that it doesn't matter what you could imagine you would end up having to go through, you can live without fear. Right? And I do think that's possible. And Dallas Willard, I've heard so many people who met him who claim that even he lived that way. And I've met people who really do seem to have lived that way and who are living that way. They're usually older, wiser folks than me. But I just, and it could be just me being so young that I am convinced that it's kind of impossible for me to fully believe that reality is governed by someone so wonderful that if my worst fear happened, I would be okay. And so he poses a solution saying, imagine that the worst fear that you have has happened. And then just imagine yourself in that situation. What has changed about God? What has changed about reality? Are you really not okay? And I think if I imagine my worst fear, yes, I think I would be taken care of. I would be okay. Things would ultimately work out. But, my worst fear is that something horrible were to happen to my wife or my daughter or both of them, and I would have to see their dead bodies. I'd have to witness them just maimed or in a horrible condition. Like, that's my worst fear. And that's horrible, right? But, like, I know I would be taken care of, but it's still at the same time, I would have a hard time fully believing that they are still existing somewhere. I have, because while I intellectually understand it to be true, that the kind of dualism that Dallas Willard taught and that the scriptures, for the most part, teach is true, namely that the body and the spiritual unphysical aspects of the self are separate, and the unphysical aspects of the self go on. And even if they didn't go on, the Bible teaches that Jesus will say the word, and at the end of this age, he will tell the dead to rise, and they will rise up, and they will live. Those who trusted in him will live on with him forever and participate with him in his divine purposes for eternity. And that's what is taught in Scripture. But I can't help but be like Thomas sometimes and just be like, but really though, like, I believe it, but I still am afraid, and I think some of it is like, I've seen a dead body before. I saw my dad draw his last breath when I was 8 years old. I saw a guy who I had seen laugh and experience life and joy and just become an inanimate corpse right before my eyes. And I have, my stepdad after him. I witnessed my stepdad go through 2 years of what seemed like the most horrible, most absolutely unnecessary suffering possible, because he suffered with leukemia. And he even got a bone marrow transplant that didn't work out, and slowly died because the host cells fought against his own, he caught an infection called graft versus host, and the donor cells fought against his cells, and he just broke out in all kinds of infections all over his body. And name the type of suffering he went through. He was throwing up all the time. He was coughing up parts of his throat. I don't mean to be too graphic here, but I witnessed this stuff at the age of 10, all the way up until I was 12, or a little before that probably. But there's some things I think my memory it's just not even there, because I witnessed so much horrible stuff, and then he died. It resulted in him withering down to, he lost well over 100 pounds. He lost all of his hair. He lost all the color in his face and in his body. He wasn't a happy person at all. He was miserable. He was angry, and he just died, like, and I witnessed that with my own eyes when I was a little kid. Like, I went through a lot of stuff when I was young. I'm not saying other people haven't had it way worse than me. There's a lot of bad stuff that happens, but like, I witnessed that stuff. And actually, after my stepdad died, I became a militant atheist for a time. And I have it's a long story what led me to actually trust that Jesus is real, and eventually put my faith in him. And there's all kinds of things, and you would think, well, Christian, you have things that have happened in your life that led you to eventually believe in Jesus, even though you went through all of that. Like, why would you be afraid, or why would you believe that there's any reason to fear that death is the end? But you know, sometimes I think it's honestly as unstable of a thing with me as what kind of sleep I got. You know, whether I got not even how much sleep, but like the quality of sleep I got. Whether I really, some days I believe it more than other days. Some days I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I could die right now. I'd be chill with it. My wife or kids, something could happen to them. I know God's good. He's sovereign. He's got providence. He will take care of it, and their souls are gonna be caught up with Him in heavenly places, and then I'm gonna see Him again in the resurrection. Whatever. But like other days, I'm just like, that doesn't seem concrete. That doesn't seem, and people have led me to like looking at like near-death experiences, but almost all near-death experiences took place when there was still an active brain. So I'm like, maybe there was brain stuff going on, and some of them I'm not delegitimizing a lot of near-death experiences, because honestly, once again, like, I believe intellectually that they're true, but it's like a matter of, I want to believe in every cell of my being, and in the way that I act, and in everything that just flows from me. I want to believe that God is so wonderful, and that He's truly just so great, that I just really don't need to be afraid. And I want to be without fear. Like I want it so sincerely, but I still find myself having a hard time, and there was this one kid in Alabama who he was brain dead for a short time, but he did have a near-death experience, and that was a really rare case. And like stuff like that gives me hope, and like, but at the same time, I'm like, I ain't been there. I ain't died, and it's just, and I've witnessed some terrible things, and why does God allow it to happen? And I mean, I just wish people weren't so shallow about it. Like, either you're a fool for believing it, or you're a fool for not believing it. Like, no, I think we need to help people work through this stuff. And Dallas Willard really was the only person who I've really met, or I didn't ever meet him, but who I've ever encountered through reading his books and through watching his lectures, who actually addressed things in a deeper way, in a more meaningful way. Because like, he got to the root of like, no, belief is something so much cooler than just intellectually assenting to some theological or philosophical points of view. If I believe something, I act as though it's true, and I believe that Jesus was the most intelligent person that ever lived. I believe that if God were to have been, if the character of God were to be distilled into a human person, it would have to be Jesus. I believe He was the most wonderful thing that ever graced the earth. Like, He was the real deal, and I mentally and intellectually assent to the idea that that's God. That Jesus of Nazareth, the historical figure, was the advent of God Himself on the planet Earth. The revelation of His character and His glory and everything that we need to know about Him. to humankind. But it's like, I don't know, I wasn't there. I didn't see him rise from the dead. And listen, again, I believe up here that he rose from the dead. I do. But like, I want to believe in every fiber of my being that death is such a you don't have to worry about it kind of thing. The way that Dallas taught. And the way that Jesus taught, more importantly. He's like, don't even be worried about it. You know, the disciples were in a boat, and this boat was just overflowing with water, and they're just freaking out, and they go over to Jesus, and he's over there napping. And they're like, don't you care about us, Lord? And he's like, first of all, he just proved that he has authority over all that. All the wind and the waves and the water and all that stuff. You know, and then he looks at these guys and he's like, why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? And they're probably just like, what the heck just happened? And who is this astounding personality that we're in this boat with? You know, and that's kind of what the Gospels say they reacted like. You know, he's just like, you know, Jairus' daughter dies, and he's like, oh, she's just asleep. You know, I wanna feel the same way Jesus felt about death. But there's hurdles to get through. Like the psychological effect of witnessing a beautiful personality embodied in a person you love, and their humor and all the things that there are to be witnessed about them, and then witnessing them just lying there dead, or worse yet, lying there in a horrible condition, like in a graphic condition. Because what happens in your head when that is witnessed is not just immediate reassurance. Everything's okay. That person's living on. Everything's going fine with them. This is just a shell casing. This body, this maimed body is just a shell casing. And who they are, their memories, their thoughts, their emotions, all their unphysical parts of who they are going, they're somewhere else. You know, that's not what happens. What happens is that body that they lived in is so important, because that's how you experience that person. You know, and Dallas touches on that, and I love that he does. Unlike a lot of Christians, it's like, oh, well, that was just a dirt suit. No. A mother labored for hours, possibly even over a day, sometimes longer than that, giving birth to that body. You know, and Dallas has talked about that. The body's so important. So when the body dies, the psychological reaction is, if that's what happened to the them that I got to interact with and love and touch and experience and just be close with, and every experience I had with this individual that I value and cherish so deeply, and that is deeply embedded within my character and my personality, if that's what happened to them that I know, how am I supposed to expect that there's any more to them? That's a natural psychological reaction, especially for people as complicated in mind as me. So it's like, how can I come to believe? Better yet, how can I come to be completely unafraid of something horrible happening to someone I love, when I just find it almost impossible to fully believe in every ounce of who I am that there may yet be some room for there to be non-existence of the invisible things about them, when the mediator between, that is the brain, the mediator between the non-physical parts of them and the physical parts of them, that is their body, has died and is gone, and their body is gone. It's subject to decay now. And just with all that we experience, how is it that we can just be completely unafraid? Because I don't feel, and of course this is just feelings, but I just don't feel like it's possible, and I can't imagine how it would be possible. But if somebody can offer some solutions, I desperately want to become the kind of person who isn't afraid at all, but who can just take a nap in the boat. Just like my wonderful rabbi. Because I really do want to be like him. There's nothing I want more than to be like Jesus. So, yeah. I just thought I'd put this here. And there's so much more I've thought of too, and I probably won't think of it until I go and lay in bed. But this is what I have to offer, and I just, I can think around some of it, and like I said, some days I believe more than other days, but I just want to permanently believe it in the same way I believe the sky is blue, in the same way I believe that the light turns on when you flip the light switch. I just act as though it's true. I don't even have to think about it. I want to believe that if somebody is dead in front of me who I love, that they're fine and I'm fine. And I want to believe that no matter what crisis takes place, God is so good and wonderful and so sufficient that ain't nothing to worry about. And I want it to be just as easy as flipping a light switch or sitting in a chair. That's an illustration that's been used a lot in my life. Faith is like sitting in a chair. You're confident that the chair is going to hold you up, so you just sit in it. I just want it to be that kind of automatic, bodily, even response of faith. And it's not there yet, but I desperately want it to be. And you see my sincerity, you witness it. Like in all these words I've spoken, I desperately want it. I will not settle until I believe completely. Until I believe that it is without a doubt a historical fact that a man named Jesus of Nazareth really did just simply say the word, and a dead 12-year-old girl just woke up. And I believe it up here, and sometimes in here I believe it. But I want it to just be almost something I just take for granted. It's just, of course. And I don't think I'm overcomplicating this. Like, I just want it. And I pray, Father, I pray to you for it. And the Lord is witnessing me now, wanting it. And you guys who see this, pray for me also. And if you're struggling with it too, I want to pray for you also. And I want the whole world to be able to believe. I want every human being to be able to believe the way that Dallas Willard talked about and the way that Jesus believed in his Father's sufficiency. So I just thought I'd drop this here, and I already said that, but God bless you guys. You guys just have a wonderful, wonderful time, and may your worst fears not happen, even if you're not really afraid of anything. May you just be all right. And I think that's why Jesus taught us, lead us not into the time of testing. That's really what that word means when he's temptation. It's just lead us not into the hard times, but deliver us from the evil one. Because we don't want it. But if it comes, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. See, there's a psalm about it. And that's why I want to get there. Pray that you guys would too. And maybe some of you guys can help me get there too. Bye-bye.